Good morning and welcome to the very first Missions Accepted Mission Cast, which is where we're going to be speaking to people who have, at some point in their life, decided to make a change and take on a new mission. And often that means having to give up some of their life before to do something new. And it's a risk and it's a little bit scary and all those things. But this is to show you that it's possible. And there are lots of people doing it. So maybe it'll inspire you to do something similar. So I'd like to welcome Kate Hoyle, who is joining us today. And Kate's going to tell us a little bit about her story. And Kate, I mean, your work is quite mission driven that you're doing now, I understand. So tell me a bit about how that came about, what that mission is and how it happened.
So I'd say my overriding mission is creating transformation in people's lives. I'm not just talking about change, I'm talking about really significant. What I'm after is that transformation because I know it's possible. The specific mission is helping teenagers suffering from anxiety and low self-esteem. And that comes from my daughter's journey. I mean, often these missions are very personal, aren't they? And led by personal experience. And this is definitely born out of that and not wanting young people to suffer like she did and not for parents to suffer like I did and feel very lost of what to do and where to go. So that's really where it comes from.
So what were you doing previously or at the time when this happened?
I've always worked in corporate. I mean, law, finance. I was in the city, investor relations, marketing. I've done all sorts of things, but always in a corporate environment. And so this is very, very different. I mean, if you ever asked me, would I become a therapist? Not on my horizon at all. And it's, it was a big, big transition for me. I had no idea whether it was going to work, whether I could do it. But yeah, a complete 360.
So did you sort of wake up one day and say, that's it, I'm doing it? Or what was what went through your mind?
This was a long time coming. So my daughter was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression at the age of 12. And we spent years under CAMS, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. And poor girl, I mean, if I heard about something that had worked for somebody else or a different type of therapy, I would just haul her off to try something else. Nothing was working, and she was sinking. It was quite a dangerous spiral. And then I came across Marissa Peer and I came across RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy, and I thought, I like what this woman is saying. It was all about get in there, treat the problem, set someone free. And I thought that's exactly what we're looking for. And so I set about finding a therapist to work with Eleanor, found someone, and interestingly, my immediate reaction was, oh, well, that was something else that didn't work. And then as the sort of days and weeks and months progressed, I'm like, oh, she wouldn't have been able to do that before. And oh, she's actually making it into school. And then it just became a snowball effect. And I was so blown away that I pretty much dropped everything, retrained, and now I absolutely love what I do.
I mean, that's quite a big leap. I think for lots of people, it's a much more gentle process. So those first few months, I mean, did you actually leave your job and do this, or did you sort of start training on the side a bit and then continue?
Well, I had actually left my job because also going on at this time was my parents' end of life care. And so I was ready for a new career. I was looking at going back into corporate. That was, but probably more into the charity sector. And so I was ready for something new. So I guess that is the background. But no, it was an absolute leap of faith. I mean, when I started training, I thought, well, I don't even know if I'll be any good at this. And then very early on in my training, I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And then I have always kept working, doing some work for the Rapid Transformational Therapy Training School. So as soon as I finished my training, I got involved with doing some work for them. So I've always had that running in the background, never full time. So my whole world has become RTT. So it was all based around the same thing. But I can quite understand, doing something as a side gig, making sure that it's really what you want to do. That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, it is a huge leap, isn't it? And you have to have that trust and that belief. The only downside to that is that often the biggest change comes when we have to make that change. When you talk about really inspirational people, often because they had no backstop, they had to make this work. So I think if you stay too much within your comfort zone, you're not really going to get to the end result. There has to be that moment where you take that leap of faith and go all in. And so now, I can see start gently, but don't stay there too long.
That is a nice little soundbite as advice to people. Now I know this was a few years ago now that this happened. So all is well with your daughter, and so the mission's moved beyond your own experience now into working with other people. And so at any point, have you had doubts that you're doing the right thing, that you could just sort of go back and do what you do, and it wouldn't come with all the baggage that does come with your sort of
I mean, yes, I've never doubted what I'm doing. I've never doubted that it's what I want to do. I've never doubted that it has far more impact than anything else I've ever done. But I've also come to the realization it's much easier working for somebody else. I mean, let's be real. And people pay you to be sick and to go on holiday and, put into a pension pot. And so, there's, I'd say it's much easier being in my old world, but less fulfilling. And that's the trade-off, isn't it? It's finding something, once you know your mission and you're clear about it, it's, executing that and realizing that there will be trade-offs. It's not all going to be a bed of roses. It's hard work. And there will be days when you have massive doubts and wish that you could just, change that. But I've never once wanted to step back into my old life. As much as I enjoyed my career, I loved it, met some amazing people, did some great things, but I don't think I would ever want to be employed by somebody else again now.
Yeah, I've asked myself that question when if Google came along and paid me £200,000 a year, would I take it? I think, if I had to work 5 days a week, I don't know, going into an office. I'm not sure.
I mean, those days, there's no way I'm going to be on that commuter platform ever again. I mean, that's for sure.
And how wonderful that you found something that is so personally satisfying, yet means you don't have to commute to work every
absolutely.
day.
Absolutely.
Or even remotely commute, which is still a thing for people. So what did you garner support for this along the way? Was it important for you to have people around you who were sort of invested in this with you?
Not really. I mean, my family's always been very supportive, which is a huge thing. Quite often you have to not listen to your family because they are coming from a place of love and wanting to support you. I think my mum would have been that person. She would have been like, oh, you're working too hard. So it's not that they're trying to hold you back. I think they're concerned, but they're not going to be the people that understand about what you're trying to do and your pricing system and all the rest of it. You have to concentrate on the people that you are going to be working with, and that's very unlikely to be your family members. But I've realized how important practical support is, as well as kind of community support from people who understand what you're doing. So from a practical point of view, I think the hardest thing of starting out is that you have to do everything yourself, and it's hard. There's no way of getting around that. and you have to become a master of things you thought you'd never have to learn. I've learned so
like
much.
StreamYard.
Exactly. Every
Mm.
day you learn something new. And I think that's a great thing, actually. It's a great thing for your brain. It's a great thing to keep you enthusiastic, but it's hard. So I now am very lucky. I have VA support. I have copywriter support. I do not do my own tax returns. I've always had a cleaner ever since I started working, because I thought, well, if I'm going to go back to work after having children, I want to spend my spare time with them. I don't want to spend it, so that was what I decided I was going to spend some of my earnings on. So things like that are important. I've also sort of had coaching programs. I've worked with Helen Pritchard, Shah Wasmond, and I find that's important because it can be very lonely when you set off yourself, can't it? And you don't have people to bounce ideas off. And not those coaching programs don't just bring the coach. I was very aware that I was joining them to also be surrounded by people at the same stage as me. I wanted to have that network of people who would understand what I was going through and bounce ideas from and have the encouragement. And that has been worth its weight in gold. It absolutely has. I have the most amazing network of people that I've never met in person, but I know I could call on if I ever needed. I know I can throw out a question and somebody will come back with an answer, so I'd say that's very valuable.
Yeah, because I think what happens is, particularly if you're thinking about doing something when you're still in your working environment, the people you work with are not going to be on the same path as you. I mean, you might find one or two, but generally it's a very different mindset, isn't it? And
yeah,
having people just say, it's okay to be the kind of person that you are. And it's okay to be this person who wants to do all these crazy things and learn all these things, because it can be quite a different, more institutionalized view, I think, particularly when you're in the corporate world, because people are focusing on different things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is a very, very different mindset. Very different mindset.
So if someone was teetering on the edge of doing something like this, Kate, but still not quite sure about it, I mean, what would you say to them? Or what would you have said to yourself at that point where you're not quite sure whether this is the thing for you to do or not, to go
I
after
think
something?
you just, life's too short. Just do it. I mean, I am a realist. I'm quite a practical person. You still have to pay the bills. Like, if this is the difference between you paying the mortgage or, being able to survive, it would be irresponsible for everyone to say, just chuck in your job and, the universe will provide. Not necessarily. Like, you have to have the grounding, you have to sound it out, you have to have the thought process, like, is there a demand for this, where do I find my market? You have to have that thought process. But I'd say if you've done your due diligence, if you've really worked this out, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, take the leap of faith. Because at the end of the day, if you've been employed for many, many years, you'll always be able to go and get another job. You don't suddenly become unemployable because you took a bit of time out to try a different venture. It actually shows you've got gumption and foresight and enthusiasm, and it shows other skills to people. And there's no harm, equally, if it's not for you, to go back into the corporate world. And certainly over the last couple of years, I know plenty of people that have done that, and that's right for them at that time. But I think people always regret far more what they didn't do than what they did do. No one is ever going to be on their deathbed saying, I wish I'd worked a bit harder. I wish I'd been there at 9 p.m. in that corporate job. It's going to be, give it a go.
Yeah,
if you can have some financial security behind you, give it a go.
And I didn't check with you, Kate, but sort of what kind of age are we talking about that this happened for you, that you made this?
Oh, yeah. I love this part of my story, actually, because this is my early 50s.
Yeah.
And, this nonsense that, I'm too old to change. Never. Change is available to anyone at any point in their life, at any age. And, the other thing is, sometimes people can say, do you wish you'd done this earlier? And yes and no. I think I always had in the back of my mind that I would like to run my own business, but I wouldn't have had all the experience and the knowledge and all the skills I'd learned in my corporate career, which have definitely come into play, had I not done that. So,
Mm.
things happen at the right time in your life, and definitely it's never too late. And I think you bring a whole load of experience and wisdom, as you get older.
Which people don't realize they even have
Oh,
quite often,
absolutely.
I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like you sometimes need to tease all that out, but certainly, your resilience with building a business and things like that, I think when you've been around the blocks a few times, those things become
Yeah.
a little bit easier and challenges than perhaps when you're younger.
Yeah.
Kate, thank you so much. Hopefully that will be inspiring to others, and of course we'll have your contact details added to the description when once this has gone on to LinkedIn or to Facebook. And so if anyone does feel like that Kate may be able to offer some support for their children, their teenagers, then that's a way to get hold of you. So brilliant, Kate, and thank you again for being the very first guest
Oh,
on
I've loved it.
Missions
Thank you very
Accepted
much for
Mission Cast.
inviting me, Susie. It's always great to talk to you.